Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Stock Market Today. It's Allie Coram and Justin Nielsen here with a breakdown of the action in today's session, Monday, October 14th, where we saw a lot of green out there, Justin. We've been in a bull market, and if it didn't feel like it before, today underneath the surface, it really did feel like there was a lot of power to today.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest issue right now is it's harder to find setups because a lot
Right.
of things have already kind of started moving out. And so it's really following up on setups that we saw last week and the week before. So, but we still have a couple names that we're going to go over. We'll include today Delta Airlines, Pulte Group, and one of my old favorites, Corning.
Yeah, we will take a look at that as well. Okay, we'll get to those stocks, but first, let's take a look at those major indexes. The S&P 500 finishing the day up almost 0.8%. The Nasdaq up 0.9% on the day. The Dow up about 0.5%, and the Russell 2000 up almost 0.7% on the day. So gains across the board for the major indexes. Another new high for the S&P 500. The Nasdaq lagging still, but getting close to its prior highs, Justin.
Yeah, and I think the important thing is that when it crossed that 18,000 level, there was that 18,017 high from previously. That was kind of an important inflection point. And the first time it crossed it, it couldn't hold it, came back, tested the 21-day moving average line one more time, and that's kind of where we took off. So it's been getting a little bit stronger here. As you mentioned, the relative strength line still shows it's lagging the S&P 500 a little bit. But it's improving, right? If you kind of take a look at the September bottom, you can see that it's kind of trying to turn back into an uptrend here. So it's a little positive. And today, XLK, the tech sector spider ETF, was the top group, followed closely by XLU. They were kind of battling it out. So again, not what you normally expect is for a strong day like this to kind of have both XLK and XLU as your leading sectors, but that's the market we have.
That is the market that we have. Okay, let's also take a look at RSP, one breadth measure, the equal weighted S&P 500 ETF. We are in new high territory here as well with a gain of about 0.7%. So, Justin, what are your thoughts on the action here for RSP?
I like the fact that it's more broad participation. Now sometimes there have been a lot of rotations under the surface, and that can be a little tricky, make it a little disconcerting sometimes, where you're just like looking over there and saying, well, gosh, is that lane going faster? And but the fact that we have a broad participation, I think overall is a good thing. It makes it a little bit easier, but that's not to say that the big gains have been coming. Again, I think what we call a stock pickers market. They're not all created equal, even though that RSP equal weighted is showing more strength. There are the bigger gains coming from certain sectors, and so I think it's still one of those things where you want to look for those areas that are moving the most, those stocks that are looking the strongest, and it's really been one of those situations where you have to make sure that you're getting your buy points really well put in, because there have been a lot of like little tosses and turns that can easily shake you out of these positions that then just turn right around and go up, and potentially without you if you got shaken out. So I think it's been one of those times where you really do have to be a little bit more precise on your buy points.
Yep. Well said. Okay, let's now take a look at IWM, which represents the small caps. A really impressive move on Friday.
Yeah.
But Justin, since this has been all over the place, it I think was sort of difficult to want to go in aggressively here with the small caps, just because it seems like every time they start getting going, you see the small caps turn tail. Could this time be different?
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of Charlie Brown with Lucy and the football, right? It does seem like the Russell 2000 has been playing the part of Lucy a lot of this year, where it looks like it's ready to go and it just doesn't. And it's probably a good idea to take a look at the weekly chart here, because I think that one of the notable things here is that whereas before it was really kind of that 200 area that seemed to be the sticking point, we are at least finding ourselves above that area now. So that's where the action is happening, and we're even kind of clearing like the 2200 area. So I think that's an important area that, well, and I should say 2200 is for the Russell 2000 itself, 220 for the IWM.
Right.
But yeah, I think if we can kind of stay above that, make some progress. I like that we had such a strong day on Friday, and we're following up today. That's another important point. When you see that follow up action, as opposed to a lot of times what we were seeing before, is you'd have one strong day and then it would immediately fall apart the next day. So if we can kind of cobble together a few days up in a row, I think that does tell us that the Russell 2000 has more of a chance of participating. And we let's not forget the mid caps. MDY, if you take a look at that real quick, that is also looking set up, and this looks stronger to me actually than
Mhm.
the Russell 2000. It hasn't been moving as much, back and forth and sloppy. It's a little bit more tamer of a chart here, and very tight action that it's coming out of, and really it kind of broke out of that on Friday, and again followed up today.
Yeah, we like to see that. Okay, next on our list, Bitcoin, the ticker IBIT here, one of the ETFs tracking the spot price of Bitcoin. IBIT, and it was up 4.5% today after a strong day on Friday. So another follow up here of strength. It was hard to find a lot of actionable stuff today, as you mentioned, Justin, but this was one space that it seemed like perhaps if traders did have a little room in their portfolio, maybe this is a setup worth looking at.
Yeah, and if you just kind of draw a line from that 37.94
Right.
down, it did break that downtrend. And so, yeah, we did add this onto Swing Trader today. Nice support at the 50-day moving average line. It's kind of, our thinking on this one today was, if we don't buy it today, well, then we're
Hmm.
not buying it, right?
Right.
Because this was kind of the last chance here. And look, you can kind of keep your loss fairly tight if you just kind of use the high. If it fills in the gap and it kind of goes in there, then you can kind of say, okay, maybe this isn't working. So you could use like the high of Friday, even give yourself some room. That's about a 4%. Stop loss there, and it gives it enough room for something this volatile, but it's not, saying like, okay, we're going to give this 8%. It is kind of keeping that loss pretty tight. And it wouldn't look right if it completely filled in that gap and started making more progress down. So
Right.
a very easy kind of asymmetrical trade where you got a lot of potential for return, and you can keep that risk pretty limited.
Mhm. Any thoughts, Justin, on how this correlates potentially to risk appetite of investors out there?
Well, a lot of times we have been looking and seeing, when folks have a greater appetite for risk, Bitcoin is one of the places that they find themselves gravitating towards. So it's just one more kind of element that suggests that people are. While there is a lot of worry out there, there's a lot of things to be worried about there. There's a lot of things that could derail this market. Overall, people are still getting very comfortable with putting some of those riskier plays on. Whether it's the stocks themselves, the Bitcoin, what have you. It's there's certainly a higher risk appetite right now than it has been for most of the year.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's take a look at SMH. This tracks the chips a day of outperformance here with SMH up 1.8%, Justin. A lot of chip stocks on the move today.
Yeah, and this is just again kind of telling you that the tech space is been coming back a little bit slower, again, as we saw from the NASDAQ, but the relative strength line on this, we're back above those moving average lines. That's the blue line and the orange line that you can kind of see by that. Yeah, there we go. By that relative strength line. So we're back above those moving average lines, and you can see that there has been a turn. Whereas starting in June, July, we were really in a downtrend on that relative strength. Things seem to be turning better for the semiconductor industry, and this is just such an important industry for tech. So that looks stronger right now. Of course, Nvidia is one of the leading stocks there. I do have a position in Nvidia. TSM is also one of the big heavyweights in the SMH. Those are right there, chomping at new highs as well.
Mhm. Yeah, and TSM with earnings this week, today's close at 192, and so I think this for TSM and NVIDIA today, new closing highs.
Yeah.
So, yeah, new closing highs and getting pretty close to new all-time highs for both of those.
And NVIDIA looking at taking out Apple as the most valuable company on the US stock market. So
Yeah,
we'll see.
yeah, that too. Okay, let's also take a look at home builders. XHB with a compelling setup here, Justin.
Yeah, another break of a downtrend here. Another thing that we added onto Swing Trader today. It got support right there at 120. Now there's two ways to kind of go about this. XHB is one that we often gravitate towards. It's a little bit more spread out. You've got a lot of 3.5% positions as opposed to ITB, which goes a little bit heavier. There's a 14% position in DHI, and then you've got Lennar, Pulte, and so on. So it's got basically your top four stocks in ITB are home builders, and that's about a 40% weight. Whereas for XHB, you don't really even have a home builder, I think, in the top 10. It's kind of spread out more into you got Lowe's in there, Home Depot, A.O. Smith. You've got a lot of different things, Floor and Decor, but there is this group move that's happening, whether it's the home builders themselves or those that kind of support the home building industry. So XHB, I think, is showing some strength. And again, I like how it got support right there at 120, and came right back above its 21-day moving average line.
All right. Let's lastly, in this little ETF roundup, take a look at XLF, which broke out on Friday on earnings from JP Morgan and Wells Fargo, lifting the group. And we saw a follow up on those gains today.
Yeah, and there's still a lot of banks that are going to be coming out this week. So if you are looking for a way to participate, but maybe not have the single stock risk, XLF is still buyable. It's in that 5% buy range. But again, you've got to be careful. It is starting to get a little extended here with the precision that's kind of required, as we talked about earlier. You don't want to wait too long, but you also look, even though the earnings risk is going to be spread out and you're not going to get that hit hard by a single stock, you do have to keep in mind, although JP Morgan was great, the other ones, it's a wait and see. So that is a risk going into this ahead of some of those earnings, but it is a way to kind of damper that. And there's a lot more than just the banks. This has financial specialty, it's got insurance, it's got Berkshire Hathaway as a big position in here. So there's a lot of different areas in that financial space that you're getting access to. So it's looking good. And again, a strong breakout with a follow-up today.
Okay, now let's take a look at some stocks. We've even got the airlines participating, and I feel like it's been a little while since we've gone to airlines as a source of leadership. I'm going to reset my price scale. Just a lot of relatively deep bases here for airline stocks like Delta, but we did get a breakout today after a handle formed. So, what are
Mhm.
your thoughts on this Delta action of 3.6%?
So one of the things I like is, as you mentioned, it is a deeper base at 31%. And I like how on pattern recognition, we can just kind of hover over it and it does the calculation for us. But if you go to the prior base, that was
Mhm.
actually even deeper. That was 39%. So we are getting kind of tighter action. I also do like that the handle, was a little bit more contained here, 11%. So as deep as that base was, it did kind of contain itself in that handle. You do have a lot of other airlines that are going to be reporting. I think United is later on this week. American Airlines is next week. So that's something to keep in mind. But, United and Delta both are looking strong. Jets, which is the ETF that covers the airlines, I mean, that looks like it's breaking out of an area. So I think it's an area to watch. And Delta certainly seems to be like one of the stronger. I think Delta and
Mhm.
United Airlines together are definitely showing leadership action.
Yes. Okay. So we'll have to see if it can add to its gains or, how earnings season shakes out with these peers reporting. Its earnings are behind us.
Right, exactly. It's the first one to report, so at least you have that behind you on this one.
Right. Exactly. Okay, next on the list, let's go to PHM. Speaking of the home builders, so the setup here for PHM similar to XHB, but perhaps a little stronger.
Yeah, very similar. Now, look, this has earnings coming up in 8 days, as do a lot of the home builders. So, again, one of the ways you could play this is you could go with a single stock or you could do XHB. But, this one has been one of the leaders. It is, looked very strong, even compared to XHB to a large degree. And it really just skirted that 21-day moving average line. It didn't really even come much below those previous high areas of resistance like around 135 and 136. It really just held up very well. So, and remember, this is despite the fact that the 10-year treasury yield
Yeah.
was really skyrocketing here lately as we kind of shifted the perception of what was going to happen in terms of uh, the recession
Rate cut.
fears and what the Fed was going to do. So, Pulte Home has been really holding up very well. Didn't even really break the 21-day moving average line in a big way. So, this is one of the stronger ones in that area. And this is something that is on leaderboard and has been for a while.
Yep. Okay, so that's a look at PHM, and let's round things out with a look at GLW. This is Corning. We had a breakout last week from a cup with handle base. This is our stock of the day today. It's still in a buy zone.
Yeah, so this is one we were actually talking about. I think I brought this up on an IBD Live episode just before it had that breakout, and
Yeah,
it was just a nice little setup. Um,
great action.
Yeah, and so again, it's why it's important to have your eye on these things. Now, I personally didn't buy it, shame on me.
Yeah,
One of the things that I didn't like was that the sales, are a little lackluster in terms of their growth, earnings too. But this
yeah,
could be a turnaround company in a way. Corning has this habit of really reinventing itself, which is one of the reasons why I just love the story behind it. For those that maybe know this story, it goes all the way back to Thomas Edison. Your chart's not going to go
I
back
know.
that
It's not going to
far,
go
Alec.
that far back.
Right, exactly. So it goes all the way back to Thomas Edison, and they were making glass for the incandescent light bulb. Now, in college, I had Corningware that I was cooking with, the glassware that you could
Yeah, I
kind of
still
see
do.
your stuff bubbling in it and check it out in the oven. And then eventually it went to fiber optics and making ceramic, and then Gorilla Glass. For they have done so many different things with glass. And now with data centers requiring like this connectivity, they are looking at some of this optical connections that could potentially be a boon for the data centers, which of course, you say data centers, everyone thinks
Yeah.
AI. So this is that AI kind of infrastructure type play that is making Corning look a little interesting. So the breakout happened, again, I missed that. But a lot of times, if I miss a breakout, if I see tight action and I see it just hold after a big gain like that, that does get me interested. Now, we do have those earnings coming up in a few weeks. So there is kind of a clock here. But I am going to be watching this one because even if it's not something I buy immediately, the fact that this breakout happened so strongly and it held, it does tell me, hey, Corning is probably worth putting back on my radar. So even if you're not buying something immediately, being aware of this strong action and making sure it goes somewhere on a watch list so you don't lose sight of it is important. And so, whether or not you're buying it now or maybe just keeping it on your list for later, I think it's worth a spot.
All right. Well, thank you, Justin, for breaking all of that down for us. And thanks, everyone, for tuning in. That is it from us for today, but we'll be back with more tomorrow morning on IBD Live. Investors.com/IBD Live for all those details, some exciting announcements. We have a very special podcast guest coming up this Wednesday, don't we, Justin?
Yeah, Mark Minervini. We chatted a little bit in a pre-show huddle. Some great stuff he's going to be talking about in terms of the challenges of this market and some of the counterintuitive ways that he handles them.
Yeah, so that'll be coming up live at 5 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday. You can catch it live on YouTube. And then, of course, as always, we post it to investors.com/videos, investors.com/podcast, and your listening platform of choice. You can check it out, all of those places. So that's coming up on Wednesday. We're looking forward to that. And that is it for today, everyone. We will see you right back here tomorrow.